What's up? Welcome to another episode of Wassup Conversations, a podcast with icons and legends of the video game industry. I'm your host, Hamidreza Nikufar, and in this episode, I have a veteran of the industry as my guest. To mention a few of his work, he's the director of great games like Immortals Fenyx Rising, Assassinscreed Odyssey, Assassinscreed Syndicate, Saints Row the Third, and Saints Row 4. Ladies and gentlemen, my awesome guest is no one but Scott Phillips, creative director at Ubisoft Quebec. We talked about Scott's past from Volition days of working on The Punisher, Saints Row, to Assassin's Creed and Immortals. We talked in depth and length about Scott's approach to game development, and he told me many interesting stories about behind the scene of making those great games. Immortals Fenyx Rising is available on Amazon Luna, Windows, Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Stadia, Xbox One, and Xbox Series X and S. And the new DLC, The Lost Gods, should be out by the time this episode is online. Before getting into the conversation, please subscribe, follow, and share this podcast whenever you're listening or watching Wassup Conversations. Wassup Conversations is available on all the major podcast streaming services and also in video on YouTube. You can learn more about the podcast on www.nikufarmusic.com or from my Twitter handle at hrnikufar. Thank you for tuning in. Let's go! Hello and welcome to Wassup Conversations, Scott. Thank you for doing this. How's everything? You doing good?
Yeah, no, I'm surviving the second version of 2020 and getting through this all the quarantine and pandemic and all that stuff. No, I'm doing well and enjoying having everyone at home and trying to survive and work at the same time with everyone all in the same building. So I'm great. I'm good. How are you?
That's great. I'm doing fantastic. Man, you've been involved in some of my favorite games, from Saints Row to all those Assassin's Creed and my new favorite, Immortals. I finished Immortals a couple of hours ago after a month of playing, and it's honestly one of the best games I've ever played. This game has a lot of things going on and does it all perfect. From fantastic puzzles, which are my favorite thing in this game, to engaging action, beautiful visuals, and story. And this is an amazing game. So congratulations to you and all those talented people at Ubisoft Quebec.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. It's great to have praise such as that. That's a project that we definitely put a lot of ourselves into, so it's great to hear.
Yeah. So we'll get back to Immortals, but let's talk about you for now. Usually I kick off the conversation with my guest background because people listening to this or watching it can easily relate to the success story of an inspiring artist like you. So let's hop on the animus and go back. How was growing up? How did you fall in love with games? And was it something that you always wanted to do, or you had something else in mind?
I think from a very young age, I knew I wanted to do something with computers. Like I can remember long ago when I was, below 10, I told my dad I'd like to do something with computers. And that was about it at the time. But very soon after, I was playing video games with the Super NES came out, and we had other things, or the NES came out, and then we had other things like the ColecoVision and an Atom, and so video games were always something I was interested in playing. And then sort of when I got into, I would say about high school, I got I bought all the components and built myself a computer, which was super fun. And then started getting into games like Quake and lots of other PC games. So it was a bit more intense in terms of like getting the game to work. Like at the time, I had to, edit autoexec.bat and config sys files in order to get the right memory settings in order to play some games. And I can remember, I think it was like Wing Commander 3 was too intense for my PC, and I got it for Christmas and I couldn't play it on my PC. So I was super disappointed because I didn't have enough RAM. So I was really getting into like the depths of like, okay, how do computers work? How do you make these games? And I started modding Quake and creating meshes and creating animations and figuring out how all these things worked. And that's when I sort of realized like, okay, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to learn how to do and learn to be a professional in, and start a career in doing it.
So were you aware that you can make a living making games back then?
Yeah, I think so, because I knew like from Doom shareware version and like Duke Nukem 3D, and when these games were coming out, I knew there were these really small studios, mostly in Texas, that were making those games, and it was less than 20, 30 people. So I knew there was an industry, and I knew it was really small, and so getting in was sort of the hardest part of like being able to prove that you could do something. So I knew I wanted to do design, because that felt like where the dreams of the game come from is the design aspect. And I knew I couldn't just jump right into it. And so I started doing art and animation, and I really enjoyed animation. And so it was sort of a good path in, especially because animation and movement and how the player moves and how the enemies move are all super key to how the game feels and how it plays. So they're really important and central to what makes a game fun. And so they're really tied to design. So it was relatively easy for me to translate sort of my animation, what I had built up as my experience, into the more design aspect, and to be able to transition into that.
So you were self-educating yourself?
Yeah, I went to Purdue University, which is in central Indiana. It's known as an engineering school. I'm from not central Illinois. I lived in central Illinois for a long time. I'm from Chicago. So Northeast Illinois. So I'm from the Midwest, and I've lived in the Midwest. Other than coming to Quebec, I've lived in the Midwest for most of my life. So Indiana was not all that far off for me, but I went there to get a degree, primarily to like show that I could get a degree and that I could get some of that more artistic sort of foundation that I felt I needed in order to be able to get into the industry. There were a few like colleges or training education centers that were specific for video games, but I felt, for me at least, that it wasn't the right thing to do to super specialize in that. I wanted to have a bit of a broader base, and then on my own, I was sort of, I would go to class and learn painting and charcoal drawing and life drawing and photography and all those things. Then I would go back to my room, and I would play Counter-Strike, and I would learn about how these games are made, and I would sort of start animating on my own. And so I was doing a bunch of stuff sort of on the side, or where I felt like I could drive my own education in that way.
Yeah, I sense that curiosity and passion was the main thing moving you forward. How did you get your first job in the industry?
So after college, I moved back home. For about 6 months, I was making portfolio stuff. So making animations and demo reels and that sort of thing, and putting them onto VHS cassette tapes, and then sending those out to studios. Because at the time, you couldn't really send that big of a file through email, and there was no, cloud storage and that sort of stuff. So I was sending that all over the place. I had a couple of possibilities with like a studio that was working on Call of Duty, and I talked with. I was going to get an internship, if I remember correctly, at Bungie when they were still in Chicago before they got bought by Microsoft. Like, they got bought by Microsoft like a week after I started talking to them, and then they were like, "Hey, yeah, sorry, we're moving to Seattle, so this is not going to happen."
Goodbye, Halo.
But then, and then I got contacted by a studio in Central Illinois called Volition, and went down. I had a phone interview, and then went down and interviewed with them. It was. I still remember it very clearly because it was a small office park. It was like going to the Office, the TV show. It was very much like that. Cubicles and small offices, and not the CEO, but the president of the studio was walking around in his socks, and it was a really interesting atmosphere. And I remember that was the first time I saw, I think it was GTA 3. One of the co-presidents of the studio was playing GTA 3, and I had never seen it, and I was like, "Whoa, that's really cool!" Because I had been on PC games for so long that I was unaware of what was happening on the console spectrum. And so I interviewed there, and they hired me to do cinematics or animation and cinematics. And I started, and let's see, 2002, and within the first week. Yeah, my first game was Red Faction 2. And so I got hired, went to the studio. The first week, there was a meeting that said, "Hey, we're outsourcing all the cinematics," which was what I thought I had been hired to do. So I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm fired. That was quick. So basically, I just started picking up every single thing I could do. Like I was modeling, I was animating, I was knocking over, I was doing all the physics. Like there were physics objects that just needed to be animated and set up technically to fall over. And so I was doing that, and that I stayed on basically because I was able to just pick up any little task that was available and help out everybody.
That's insane. Right. So looking back at your career, I see a reoccurring theme in your work. Your games are all funny, and in other words, they are comedy. From those hilarious and violent interrogation scenes in The Punisher to Saints Row, especially 3 and 4, and even in Assassin's Creed games, Odyssey had a lighter and funnier tone relative to Origins. Also, Syndicate was the same too, and Immortals. It's all over the place. So my question is, how do you approach comedy, and how do you balance it with other aspects of the game, especially with violence?
It's tough. Like I don't want to take too much credit for like the tone of most of those games. The two that I will definitely say are my tone is Saints Row 3. That's for sure. Like I had a huge impact on the tone of that game. Saints Row 2 and 4, I had a decent impact. The Assassin's Creed games were, I think some of it is maybe a lot of it is just sort of the studio interactions, and maybe it's the interactions that people have it's a bit more sort of joyful in a way. Like we're here, we're making these fun games, like we're getting paid to make video games. Like that's amazing. It's super fun. And so a lot of times we make these things for ourselves. We make things that we think that make us laugh as a team. And thankfully they turn out to make other people laugh in most cases. The balance with comedy is honestly super tough, and finding the right tone is I honestly don't have any. There's no special silver bullet. It's I think it's the combination of all the people involved. Like the writer on all the Saints Row games brought a ton of himself into all of the characters, into all the dialogue, and then you combine that with sort of the gameplay, and it just creates this special lighthearted. We're not taking ourselves too seriously. Like there's plenty of games that take themselves very seriously, are trying to tell very deep, very impactful human drama and dramatic stories. And for us, it's or for me and the games that I tend to work on, it's much more, let's have fun. Let's just enjoy this. We're not going to try to send too deep of a message with this game. We recognize that we're making games. They should be fun. People should be able to feel they can escape into them and enjoy the experience, and just sort of like get home at the end of the day. You've had a rough day. Just play the game, have some fun, have a bit of this overpowered super fantasy of being awesome and being the hero and being the central figure. And I think that that mix has just sort of turned out to be very appealing to a lot of people, with Saints Row, with Assassin's Creed, with Fenyx Rising as well. So it's really sort of a loop of having a strong group of people that are all really enjoying what they're doing and trying to make something that they really love. And I think that's the key, is just trying to have fun as a group and make other people enjoy it as well.
Yeah, that's very interesting. It means that the spirit of the team that working on a game is very influential on the game.
Yeah, it's super key. And if people are not having fun making the game, then it's just a product. It's not a.
It's going to show up in the game, right?
For sure.
Yeah. So I did some detective work prior to this conversation. I asked some of your older colleagues about you.
Oh, interesting.
And funny that many of them mentioned that you were a very important force in changing the Saints Row and the Saints Row 3. So I got two important compliments about you. First, that you are a great decision maker. And second, you know the world of the game you're working on pretty good. So when I think about it, it opens up two important questions for me. First, what makes a person a good decision maker when working on a video game? Second, how do you translate an abstract idea into a natural and perfectly balanced mechanism in the gameplay?
How to be a good decision maker? I think there's sort of an innate, in some ways you just sort of know, okay, I like this, or I can imagine myself liking this. And there's something to that I would imagine, I haven't had too many deep conversations with other people in creative roles like this, but I would imagine a lot of it is just sort of gut instinct. The person I probably talked about it with it the most is the creative director on Assassin's Creed Odyssey, Jonathan Dumont, who definitely he says it like that. He knows 80% of an idea very, very quickly. He has like, I know the direction to go. There's lots of things to figure out, but I know the direction, and I sort of feel the same way, where I can picture the game, I can picture the gameplay, how things fit together pretty early on, and I know where we should go. The other, I think, key aspect to that has taken, I think, longer to develop and is a sort of harder thing to grasp onto, is being a leader, and being a leader who can give space to other people. Like, honestly, that's been one of the hardest lessons to learn, is, trusting other people, giving them authority, giving them responsibility, and then sort of backing away and letting them do something great. It's something I don't think I started out doing very well. I don't think most creative leaders start out doing that very well, because they're very much like, no, don't try to do anything. Just do exactly what I tell you, and we will get the perfect thing. And I think it takes time to be able to grow and to be able to be comfortable giving space to other people. That is probably one of the biggest challenges in my sort of daily or weekly work, is giving space and making sure that, you're building and raising up a team. It's not just I'm not the type of creative leader who I'm going to crush everyone else. And this, I'm going to put, this is Saints Row, a Scott Phillips joint. Like that's not my thing at all. That's not what I want. And so I think that's another key element of making decisions, is honestly like passing the torch to other people and saying, okay, this is the way I think we should go, either prove me right or prove me wrong, and let's go with it. I forgot your second question.
The second question was, how do you translate an abstract idea into the world of a video game?
A lot of it I've found is sort of, is either the gut instinct aspect or is iteration. Like we spend a lot of our time as designers writing ideas, or I spend a lot of my time in PowerPoint, honestly, is like going into Google Images. Like I can picture something. Okay, I need to find something that's going to sell that idea to the team, that they're going to be able to look at that picture of Neo in the Matrix as he is running around with two guns, like in the battle scene in the bottom of the tower. Like if you can do that, if you can put an idea into a visual format and then sell it to someone, I think they much more quickly grasp what that means. And then it's okay, let's get it into the game as quick as possible and let's put it in someone's hands and start playing with it. Because nothing is ever sort of right the first time, and it's always going to take a lot of iteration, and honestly, it always takes longer than we think it's going to take to get to something good. I think, like if I think about one of the first mechanics I really worked on as a designer was the interrogation mechanic in the Punisher, and it was primarily myself and an animation programmer who he was doing all the technical stuff, but also helping with the design, and I was doing all the animation and the design. And so we were looking at, okay, what's going to be fun? And I think one of the first ideas I had was just like, I think it was smashing someone's head into a toilet. And I was just sort of translating it into the mechanic of, okay, what do I have on the control pad? And it was, okay, well, I have back and forward. All right, well, let's do that as your back and forward. And then we just had to translate that into the game and try. And it's, it's a bit, violent, obviously it's violent, but it's also just like it's a video game. It's a bit silly. It's like it's ridiculous, but it's still like just that motion is so satisfying. It's like, and I remember hearing I think it was the co-president or vice president of the studio just bellowing out a laugh the first time he was playing it in a different room. I could hear him just like going nuts, enjoying it. And I knew like, okay, this is something really, really special. And I think that loop of having a good core idea that you can sell and then getting it in game and iterating it, I think that's the key.
Yeah, whenever I say Punisher, the game, everybody the first thing they remember is those interrogation scenes, and they all laugh, and it's so crazy. That's the most violent thing in that game.
Yeah, exactly.
And everybody laughed. And about abstract ideas, I was actually playing Immortals, thinking about it. Like, okay, he was probably like, right, let's have this awesome RPG action game, this fantasy world, and we want to have some puzzles. How do we have puzzles? And we have like these vaults that in another world that they have puzzles. And it's an idea, but how to kind of merge these elements together is crazy. And in this game, it works. And I'm always, when I'm playing, I'm always deciding like, okay, what do I want to do right now? I want to just have fun and, have a fight with these enemies. No, I want to have solve some fun puzzles. I want to explore this world. I want to level up my character. And these are like, all right, on the paper, it's so easy to have these elements, but merging them together and making them so perfect is exactly you were talking about. Is like the kind of these are all abstract ideas, but get them into a game is something else. Amazing work.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's all about iteration. I think that's one of the key elements of good game design, of good games, is taking time and really finding the fun. I think is one way I've heard it put. That it takes time. It's even if you've done it before, when you're putting something new into the game, you're inventing something brand new. It's one of those things I always think about with our schedules and why games are, everybody has delayed a game at some point. And it's like, okay, well, but we've been making games for 20, 30 years. Like, why are we not, precise on everything? As well, it's creative stuff. Like we're inventing a new camera every single time. We're inventing a new way to talk every single time. We're always discovering brand new things. It's never the same, even if it seems like the same at the end of the day, or when someone gets home and plays the game and they're like, oh, well, of course it plays like this. No, it's not. Of course it plays like that. That took time. That took iteration. That took thought process. That took many discussions among lots of people to get to where games end up. So I'm continually impressed when I play. When I play games myself, I'm always evaluating things, and there's plenty of games now where it's the medium is we're getting really good at making good games and showing great ideas, telling great stories, having great fun and enjoyable mechanics. So it's impressive as the industry sort of matures, all the things that we're able to come up with.
Yeah. So you've been working on many already established IPs. How do you create your own world around these existing ideas?
It's tough. I remember on Saints Row 2, our producer on that project was brought up regularly, like that most sequels fail, that most like the second iteration of something, usually the larger percentage is failure. And so that one was a real challenge because the Saints Row 1 team was still developing Saints Row 1. I think we started like a year before they shipped. So we could talk to them, but they were still developing the game. So they were still figuring out, what exactly is this game? How does it play? How's it going to work? So we had to sort of take on faith some things that they said would be key to the game. And then we also had to sort of push some things. If I look at, say, Saints Row 3, that was where I had sort of the creative leadership on the project. There were a couple of, by and large, I wanted to continue much of what we had done, but there were maybe half a dozen sort of like key things that I was like, I want to change this. I want to change this. I want to change this. So I felt like it was, in that case, I have a set of things I want to adjust, but we're keeping the bulk because obviously people enjoy it. This is the third game, so we're not going to change everything. With something like Assassin's Creed Syndicate, I would say we were probably building more off of what Assassin's Creed Unity had done. We were staying probably closer to what they had done, but we changed the combat completely. The traversal was very different with the rope launcher than running around the French rooftops. But by and large, it took two long years, but it was by and large it's not dramatically different if you look at it like over the progression of years. Like the bigger change was when you went to Origins and then Odyssey and now Valhalla. Those are the change is sort of more dramatic. With Odyssey, there were a couple of things where, the one that sticks out to me is the hiding in haystacks. Just the haystacks was sort of one of my pet peeves of like, I just don't like this mechanic. It's often, it's a very complex system. It's often it can be buggy. I don't like the fantasy of hiding in hay in order to assassinate. It's just not something that I felt I wanted to continue with the franchise, but it's iconic in some ways. Leaping into the hay we kept, but it was staying in the hay and then whistling and calling enemy after enemy after enemy after enemy to assassinate them in the hay was one of those things where I was just like, I do not want this. And it was like, that's a small thing, but I'm sure there are Assassin's Creed fans who are like, why is this not here? I love doing this. I want to continue doing this. How dare you take this away from me? So there are some times where you just like, you have a gut feeling about something, or for me, it was just like, I don't buy it. I don't feel like that's appropriate. So I don't want to have it in the game. So it's a challenge to not fall into the like, I didn't make this, so we're going to change it because I have a better idea. Versus, okay, something like the eagle, or yeah, it was an eagle in Origins that you could guide around, and we kept that mechanic because it was something that made sense in Origins, it made sense in Odyssey, and they have it again in Valhalla. We've changed it slightly, like how it works in each game is slightly different, or the things that it can do, or how it can tag enemies. But by and large, that mechanic is still there because it's strong. It's nice to have this little eagle buddy that you can have land on you, and there's elements that you want to keep. Another interesting one that I just thought of was the hidden blade. Like, obviously that's a super iconic Assassin's Creed element, and it was something myself, as the game director and then the creative director, we were discussing a lot because I was not super confident in removing it, and the creative director was very much like he wanted to sort of do something different. He wanted to have something tied to the game itself, and not have to like justify it within who gave you this blade that shouldn't exist yet, sort of in the logic of the story. I'm sure that could have found a way, but he wanted to do it with the Spear of Leonidas. So functionally it's the same, like gameplay wise it works the same, but fantasy wise it's quite different. I think it ended up being perfectly fine. Like, there was no big issues with that, but during development, there were a lot of people that were sort of like, how can we not have a hidden blade? This is Assassin's Creed. But it works out.
Yeah. So were you the man responsible for making Assassin's Creed an RPG game?
No, I can't take credit for that. I would put that the Assassin's Creed Origins there's certainly the first step into that. I think I would. I don't know. Again, I don't necessarily like taking credit but like, I wanted Assassin's Creed Odyssey to be a big RPG with choices, with consequences, with gear, with levels, with all these things, because that's the sort of game that I really enjoy playing. And I felt like that was a logical next step, and it's a way to sort of grow the franchise. It gives us more depth in mechanics, more depth in sort of engagement. I think it's a more interesting game. It moved away from sort of the more action adventure-y elements of like Assassin's Creed Syndicate prior to Origins. So I think that trend for Assassin's Creed, like I'm a big Assassin's Creed fan. Like I've played all of the main ones on console, except Odyssey. Actually, I still haven't played Odyssey. I played it so much during development that I have not gone back to it at home. But I'm a big fan, and I think that progression towards RPG, I'm fully on board with it. I really enjoy it, and I beat Valhalla, and I really enjoyed that as well.
Yeah, I'm a huge Assassin's Creed fan. Actually, I had Patrice Desilets on the podcast, Rafael Lacoste on the podcast, Alex Hutchinson from AC3, and you, and more people coming. So I love the franchise, and I love every new entry in the franchise and the changes you guys made. And the RPG decision was something that it brought more immersion to the world of Assassin's Creed, and I really, really love it. Now, really, I feel more like an assassin. And people are like, oh, for example, we don't have a haystack assassination. Oh, I don't feel like an assassin. Dude, we got all this other things that makes it more interesting to be an assassin. Anyways, talking about AC, was Syndicate your first AC?
Yes, that was my first AC.
So how was the experience?
I joined Quebec in 2014, Ubisoft Quebec. It was fun. I mean, it was a definite big change. Like the production practices at Ubisoft are very different from Volition, which is much smaller than Ubisoft globally. So, there were multiple studios all around the world working on Syndicate. It's a bit hard to get the sense of it, but like I have, normally I'll work mostly with other directors. So a dozen or so people. But then there's, there can be up to 1,000 people all around the world working on this game, but it doesn't necessarily feel like it. You just know that like when something is decided and is in the production pipeline, is going to go very fast. Like getting it in game is going to happen very quickly because there's so many people available to work on it. It was a challenge. One of just the basic challenges was just that the studio and Ubisoft in general is a French company. So there's in Quebec City, obviously it's a French first city. So I did not speak any French when I came here, which was I thought it would be a bigger challenge than I think it ended up being. Like everyone at the studio was fantastic. It was really easy for me to get by while learning French. Even after 6 years now, I'm okay. I can speak some and understand a good amount, but it's a challenge just interacting with people, different cultures as well. Like within the first month, I think I went to Bucharest, Romania, and met people there that we were working with, and that was a whole new eye-opening experience. I had never been there, obviously, and working with the studio that far away, with the time change, with a different culture, and all that. It's fun. Like it's really unique. It's also certainly challenging. Like no doubt, working with people all around the world with their own opinions and their own sort of like how they want to do things is very different. I was really happy to work on it as an Assassin's Creed fan. I was really glad to be a part of the franchise. And it was fun to meet all the people here that had worked on them. This was sort of Assassin's Creed Syndicate was the first sort of AAA project that Quebec was leading. And so within Ubisoft, generally a project will have a lead studio and then a bunch of associate studios that work with them in order to produce content. But it's, the ultimate authority lies with the lead studio. So we were the lead studio on Syndicate, and it was sort of I could definitely feel that the studio was right on the cusp of doing something great. And they had been building up this sort of experience on working at being a collaborative studio with Montreal and with other studios in Ubisoft on past Assassin's Creeds, on The Division and other projects like that. But this was their first, like, okay, we're going to prove ourselves. We're going to make something really great. And I think still today, the mechanics of Syndicate are really fun, like the moving around London, riding the carriages, shooting the rope launcher, all the double and triple melee kills, and the stealth. I really enjoyed the stealth. That was something I put a lot of my focus onto, was the stealth and the whistling and how you engage with the enemies. So the loops, I think, were really, really fun. So it was, I had a blast working on Syndicate, and then Odyssey as well was sort of Odyssey in my career, like the two games where I really felt like we got everything, or the conditions really lined up as best as they ever have for me, were Saints Row 3 and Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Like we had a good team, we had a good cohesion, we had a good amount of time, we had a good vision for what we were going to do, and then we had the time really to execute that and to get to a great game at the end of that effort. So everything else, like I love working on all the other games, but those are sort of the two for me that stand out as the most well executed products of my career.
So making an Assassin's Creed game, do you have to educate yourself about the history of that game? How's that going to work out? Is the studio going to help you guys out with that?
About the history of the setting, yes, we do a lot of work. We have, for each project, we've had a historian on staff. Even on Fenyx Rising, we had a historian on staff. In the early times, on Syndicate, we went to London a couple times. On Odyssey, we went to Greece twice. We met with historical experts on each of those settings. That for me is super fun because I love history. I love learning about reading and documentaries and all that sort of stuff. I enjoy that just personally. And so sort of getting paid to do that and getting paid to travel and learn about, these hidden things that not a lot of people necessarily know about is really, really fun. And then being able to say like, okay, we learned these little tidbits. Okay, let's translate them into the game and present them, to a much, much wider audience is really, really rewarding and a lot of fun. But it's the other sort of angle of that is like the brand itself has so much history and so many things that have been sort of said throughout. I don't even know how many games. I think it's more than 10 games of what character was a Templar, what character was an assassin, who did what actions took place, what really happened. It gets really complicated, and we often have to rely on sort of external wikis and sources of knowledge for people that are really expert or have been, studying and tracking the game and reading all of the lore books and all of the art books and all that stuff. In some ways, we have to rely on them. Which is funny. It's also a bit like, hey, maybe we should have somebody that's sort of our expert in that fashion. But the community there is really, really strong, and they really, really love that brand.
Great. So I love the story behind making of Immortals. So can you tell about that?
Sure. So let's see, we finished Odyssey in 2018. Soon after that, we sort of had the opportunity to, hey, we want you to make something. What would you like to make? And for us, the first, over the course of Odyssey, there were a couple of instances where we had things that occurred that we were like, oh man, if only we weren't, assassins in the Assassins franchise, we could sort of go way beyond. But within Assassin, you need to remain, we pushed it pretty far with some of the abilities and things we had in Assassin's Creed Odyssey. But there's some things you can't necessarily do. So one of the instances or examples for me was we had a bug or I think they didn't describe it as a bug, but for me, it was sort of a bug where you could recruit a Cyclops. So, 20-foot tall, one-eyed creature. You could recruit him and have him on your ship in Odyssey, and he could fight for you. You could call him to attack enemies. So it was, obviously we weren't going to ship with that, but it was like, oh man, the possibilities of that are so cool. Like the idea of just having these giant creatures out in the world and interacting with them is really unique. And so when it came time to like, okay, what would you be interested in doing next on a shorter time frame? And we just immediately went to, okay, well, let's do something that's stylized, so we can go and let the art team stretch their legs and do something stylized and not necessarily the realism that Assassin's Creed aims for. As well as mechanically, we can do things a bit more over the top. Creature-wise, we can go way beyond what we've done in Odyssey. And it just sort of developed from there. I think it was end of 2019. Eve Guillemot decided to delay several games, and so we were Immortals Fenyx Rising was one of those games. And so we took the game. We had the entire team, like I think it was 500 or 700 people at the time, play the game. I set up an Excel sheet, a survey, all sorts of things to gather as much info as we could from the team on, okay, where are we? Where do you think we should go? What investments do you think we should make? What things should we change now that we have more time? So that was a really interesting experience, and we learned a lot. And then we set our path sort of in early 2020. And then we were sort of off to the races to finish the game by the end of 2020. And then obviously pandemic hit and made it a bit harder to finish. But it was, since we were already a bit in what we call closing, we were already sort of, we knew what the feature set was. We knew how we were going to deliver things. It was not not that difficult to finish the game, but it was still a big challenge to get it done. So I'm really proud of everything that the team did, both at in 2019 and in 2020. There were very different experiences, but I think the team really rallied around this opportunity that we had to create Immortals Fenyx Rising, which was the first fully Quebec City generated new IP for Ubisoft, which the team and everyone and I myself am really proud of having created.
Yeah, amazing. Let's talk about my favorite part of Immortals, and it's puzzles. How do you guys design those beautiful puzzles?
A lot. We had sort of a couple of templates, so things we knew that were going to be fun, like a navigation challenge. So moving around the environment it's just going to be fun because we know we're going to make cool movement mechanics. We had the arrow, the Odysseus challenge, which was shooting the arrow and guiding it through different rings. That we had taken from Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and we felt like it was a mechanic that never really got its full usage in Odyssey, because you were never really challenged on, like, yes, you could guide it through a house and through a window and then headshot someone, but why? So for us, it was, okay, let's make that actual aiming and guiding part, which is the fun part, let's make that the challenge. And I think that one turned out really well. With a lot of the other puzzles, like a simple one was the fresco, is I think what we call them, where you push around the pieces to make an image. That was just one. That was one that was suggested by one of our level design directors, and since it was sort of like scalable, it was easy to make a bunch of them. It seemed like, okay, well, these are, he cut out pieces of paper and then gave me put them on another piece of paper and told me to, like, okay, solve this puzzle, and that was his prototype to prove like that this would be fun. And then the other sort of one of the other big aspects of puzzles was what we called micro puzzles, or it was sort of, we gave all the level designers a package of what we call gameplay ingredients, or GPIs. So these like boxes you could push, or balls you could roll, or pressure plates, or rings you could shoot, or buttons you could push, or a bunch of like a tool set essentially, and said, okay, you take this area of the world, use these gameplay ingredients however you want to, mix and match, and create something, and just see what's going to be fun, what's going to work, what do you think is going to be enjoyable, and then we would play it and iterate it and give them feedback, and then that sort of iteration loop would kick in, and we would just try different things. Some of them we kept, some of them we didn't. Others we changed dramatically. But having someone that was focused on like overseeing that was really helpful to give us a consistency. Because when you have 20 or 30 different people all building puzzles all over the world all at the same time, it can be really challenging to have for the player a sort of consistent like, if I push this button, I can expect something to happen in a certain way. And if that expectation isn't met, then the player is sort of like, what's going on? I don't understand. So the UX, or the user experience of that, was really important to have a consistency across all these puzzles. So I give a lot of credit to the actual level designers who were building all of these things all across the world. They used this toolbox to create a lot of really unique puzzles. The final aspect was the dungeons, or what we call the Vaults of Tartarus. They were meant to be places where we'd take you to a separate map, where we could really challenge exactly what we wanted to challenge, lay out the structure exactly how we wanted to, challenge you in either fight or logic or puzzle solving, and build up sort of a progressive structure where you'd start off with, learning it, and then testing it, and then mastering it. And that sort of flow was consistent throughout all of the Vaults of Tartarus. So it was the puzzle aspect of the game was honestly one that the Ubisoft management was the most sort of like are you sure you want to do that at first? Like when we first pitched it, we were also unsure, like, should we say puzzle? Is puzzle a bad word is that a dirty word that like they're going to give us a, yeah, puzzle. But we had some people from Prince of Persia. We had some other experience we could draw from to build these. And after a couple of months, we were able to prove to them that no, we can make some really fun stuff, and it's a great sort of pace breaker. You know, when you've got the fight and the exploration and the puzzles, those three things combine to create a really fun core gameplay loop.
Yeah, it's great because usually I play when I get home back from studio, and it's like 9 p.m. and I've been thinking all day, and my mind is so exhausted. But solving these puzzles in Immortals wasn't something that makes me kind of like tired. It was interesting. It was so much fun, and that's the key to it. And as you mentioned, the coherence between all of them were something very impressive. That I knew exactly what I should do here. What are the goals here? You know how I imagine you hiring new people designing puzzles. That scene from Inception when Leonardo DiCaprio is recruiting Ellen Page. Like, you have 5 minutes to design a 3 minutes puzzle. Yeah. And this works perfect. Thank you for keeping that. Yeah. So let's talk about your favorites. What are your favorite games of all the time?
Probably the two. Well, the first one I always think of is Baldur's Gate 2. I was in college at the time, and I really enjoyed the first one, but the second one was so. The storytelling, the fantasy, the combination of the party, the interaction between the party members, it just created such a place, such an atmosphere, such an experience that it really, really influenced me, and is still my number one. I think the sort of series, maybe not series, but the style of game I would say I probably enjoy the most now is the I guess more like modern Bethesda games. So Skyrim, Fallout, those are I just love I love the world that they create, the stories that they tell, the atmosphere that it has, the feeling of exploration and discovery, the progression, and getting stronger over time and facing off against different creatures. Like, those are probably my sort of three favorite of all time games. Like, there's others, something like Witcher 3 of the past 10 years or so was again a fantastically written and the fantasy of the game was amazing, and I think I had tried one of the earlier ones, but it didn't really grab me. But the third one, and the third one, I honestly I played about an hour of it, and then I quit, and then I came back 3 or 4 months later after hearing so many people say, like, no, this game is amazing, you have to play it. And I was like, okay, I'm going to get through it. And then once I beat I think it's a griffin, the first creature you have to beat, the first like big monster, and I couldn't beat it the first time. And so when I came back, I was like, all right, I'm going to do it. And I got past that, and then I got another hour or two in, and I was like, oh, okay, I'm hooked. It's awesome. The storytelling is just so perfect, and there's still memorable, like the Red Baron, I think will be one of those stories that everyone that played that game, at least to that point, will be able to point to that story as like one of the potentially best realized, best written, and best experience based RPG stories potentially ever.
Yeah, I agree. So, what are your favorite movies?
I like sci-fi action, so Star Wars, Star Trek. I'm sort of a child of the 80s, so things like Top Gun or Terminator or Terminator 2 are really, I love sort of the fantasy of science fiction and these futuristic elements. tied with like I'm also a big sort of apocalyptic or like zombie apocalyptic. That's a big genre for me as well. There's still not like there's a bunch of relatively good zombie movies, but I still feel like there hasn't been like the perfect zombie movie. And then I like, I mean, action again would be like Indiana Jones, comedies. Now, especially like in 2020 and 2021, I mostly just want to watch comedies. I just want to have something to let me take a breath and okay, I'm not working. I'm not thinking about all the other stuff going on. I'm just having fun.
Yeah. So, what is your favorite Assassin's Creed, and which one was the most fun to work on?
Well, the most fun to work on one was Odyssey. Since I've only worked on two of them, that's for sure the most fun. My favorite one in my memory is Assassin's Creed 2, and I just remember it being having so many great mechanics. The fantasy was good. Venice is just and Italy is just such an interesting place that's full of history and full of this sort of Dan Brown mystery of I think it's at the end of that one you fight the Pope in the Vatican, and then there's a secret chamber under the Vatican where the first civ and it's awesome. Like that's just super compelling. Like I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I love the Dan Brown sort of like weaving these fictions into history is really interesting, and I think that's where the Assassin's Creed brand can be the best. But my favorite moment was I think it's the very end of the game, where the first civ character is talking to Ezio, and then she turns towards the camera and starts talking to Desmond, but really she's also talking to you, the player, and that was such a just a like mind-bending like what, like it was a really shocking moment that I still remember it as being one of those like whoa moments that happened so rarely, and it was within such an amazing game. So that one is probably my favorite, and I still think like to play, I'm not sure that I think I tried some of the refreshes or when they re-released it, when Ubisoft re-released it, and it wasn't exactly the same as when I first played it. Things have changed, video game standards have changed, expectations have changed. So like I really like Syndicate, I really like Odyssey, I like Valhalla as well, and Origins. So I'm just a big Assassin's Creed fan.
That's beautiful. So, who are the most inspiring people in the video game industry for you?
Not a ton of names come to mind. I mean, I think since I like Bethesda games, I would say Todd Howard is like, I don't really know much about him or his style, so I can't say that I want to be like him or anything, but I admire his career. The things he's created is really awesome, and I look forward to what they're doing with whatever. I forgot the name of the two. Sky.
Oh man,
I can't think of the name of it. Anyway, they're making two games. There's a Skyrim type game or an Elder Scrolls game, and whatever the other one is, I can't think of the name of it. So that I admire what they're able to do. And then I think the other one would probably be like the Tim Sweeney, who runs Epic. Since I mean, I can remember back in the day when I was starting, and it was id versus Epic were the two big they were the two big first person shooter sort of marquee names, and Epic was always sort of a bit behind, at least in my mind. Epic was always sort of a bit behind id, but then they had Gears of War, and I don't think id necessarily was able to keep up with them. I don't know why, but then with Fortnite, which again I remember as like I remember the first version of it where it was survive the night with the zombies and build stuff, and that didn't really take off. But then like the perseverance that they obviously had to make what is now an unbelievable juggernaut within video games, and what their intention seems to be with, you know, building the metaverse, or, you know, building this the Ready Player One sort of experience is cool. Like that's really, really interesting, and whether it works out or not, we'll see. But it's that ambition is really, really impressive.
Yeah. So, what games are you most excited to play right now?
Well, whatever Bethesda puts out, I'm excited to play.
I think the name of the game was Starfield. I don't know why I forgot.
Yeah, that's right. That sounds right. I can say I don't know too much about anything coming out in the next.
Are you excited about a Mass Effect Legendary Edition? Are you a Mass Effect fan?
I am.
Star Wars.
Yeah. No, I really loved 2. Mass Effect 2 was amazing. That was a super good game. So good. I to be honest, no, I'm not going to play it. I think I would rather retain my memory of how good Mass Effect 2 was. And, you know, I beat Mass Effect 3. It was an extremely well-made game. It didn't end the way I had hoped it would crescendo. Like, it was such an amazing build up over those 3 games. Like, as a developer, seeing how they built that universe, how they took those characters, how they kept your choices throughout multiple games. Like, man, that's tough. That's impressive. Like, what they did was super impressive. But the ultimate conclusion was not what I had hoped as a player. So no, I don't think I'll play it. I mean, if I look forward a little bit, like, I'm interested in what the next Zelda game is doing, since they've teased a little bit of what they're going to do with that. What else is even coming out? I'm not sure what else is coming out this year. What I am playing now is okay. Yeah. That
are you a horror fan? You like zombies?
I do like zombies. I haven't played a ton of the Resident Evil games. Like Resident Evil 4, I loved. It was amazing. 4, 5, and 6 were good. Maybe less good as 4. I think I tried out the first person one.
7.
Yeah, it wasn't necessarily my thing. But I'm interested to see what they do with this next one, and it looks awesome. The rendering style and the quality of it looks great. I mean, right now, to say what I'm playing. I have several in motion. I have Last of Us 2. I have It Takes Two, and I have Monster Hunter Rise. All are sort of. I'm in progress on all of them.
Are you a Halo fan, by the way?
Yes. I can't. Yes, I think I've played all of them. I'm interested in what they're doing within. It's Infinite, right?
Yep.
Yeah. I haven't played a ton of first-person shooters. I've fallen a little bit out of that that desire. Like Call of Duty, I haven't played those in many years. Battlefield, I haven't played in many years. I just sort of my preference now is much more open world games where I'm able to drive my agenda. I'm able to say, right now I feel like fighting, or right now I feel like doing a puzzle, or right now I feel like doing a quest. Like I want that choice. And if the game doesn't give me that choice, even if it's super well realized, like a Call of Duty game is, it's not necessarily my cup of tea. Great.
So thank you very much, Scott. It was a fun conversation, and I learned a lot. You're awesome. Your games are awesome, and I can't wait to play your next masterpiece. Thank you for your time.
Awesome. It was my pleasure.